You know those days, I had one of these days last night when you're starving, just absolutely famished. And don't get me wrong, when I say starving, I say it in the American way, where I'm kind of hungry, not that I'm actually starving. Plenty of people starving. Don't want to make fun of that. But you know what I'm talking about. You feel really hungry. And so when you sit down to eat, you shovel in food and you shovel in more food and you keep on shoveling. Well, you might not know this. Maybe you do. Science shows that the receptors in our body monitoring the amount of food intake we've had, those run behind your taste buds. So while you're still shoveling, because the stuff tastes good, last night it was pizza, by the way, fantastic. It's a local place in Texarkana. You stop by, we'll go out and have some pizza at this place, and you'll agree it's fantastic. Gusanos, I'm talking about you. But anyway, what you find as you're shoveling it in, that you might not actually, your body might not even need that anymore. And if you ate slower, you'd actually eat less because your body then can monitor and can keep up with your actions. So having a longer meal where you take a little time can actually help you control your weight, control your intake, get rid of some of the afternoon sleepies. Lots of good things in slowing down. And I wonder if that's the same with your money decisions. Live from the 3-room apartment above Uncle Jack's garage while the basement's being renovated. Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, Average Joe Money on Twitter. Welcome to Money in the Morning. We got 2 headlines for you. We got a big idea at the end of the show. Going to try to get that done in 30 minutes. Don't always succeed, but man, we're going to try. That's the miracle of Money in the Morning. Money in the Morning is brought to you by Lemonade. If you're not familiar with Lemonade, you need to check them out. Get renters insurance, homeowners insurance through Lemonade in seconds by heading to stackingbenjamins.com/lemonade. With zero paperwork, zero brokers, couldn't be easier or faster. stackingbenjamins.com/lemonade. 90 seconds to check and see if you've got the best rate. stackingbenjamins.com/lemonade. That's how easy it is. Speaking of easy, we got some really easy to digest headlines today. Some big problems with these headlines, though. Let's get the party started. Laura?
Good morning. You supply the coffee. We'll bring the headlines. Here they come.
We do the show in front of a live Facebook studio audience, which is thrilling and also terrifying. But Jonathan's here. Hey, Jonathan. Jonathan says, no way I can't stop binge eating Taco Bell 12-pack all day. Taco Bell 12-pack for the win. Taco Bell 12-pack just sounds awesome right now. And I know that I get through like 7 of those things, Jonathan, and I probably should have stopped at, 3? Well, I probably should have stopped at 0. You know, fake meat, cheese. Not really sure that's great for me, but I think I could put down 7 of those things as we speak. But I can't do that because we got our first headline coming. This one comes to us from Business Insider, written by Scott Davis. 30-year-old Bills player this last weekend retired from football in the middle of a game, says he realized he, quote, shouldn't be out there anymore. Did you see this piece? This was, imagine, person's a pro football. What if halfway through Money in the Morning, this episode, I just got up and left? I know you'd find something else to listen to, so it probably wouldn't be nearly as dramatic, but pretty wild that he just walks out right in the middle of the football game. Halfway done. Don't really need this anymore. Let's find out what's really going on. A rough season for the Buffalo Bills got worse last Sunday when a player called it quits at halftime. According to reports, the 30-year-old Bills cornerback Vontae Davis decided not to play in the second half while the Bills trailed the Los Angeles Chargers 28-6. Davis's teammates were apparently told he was quitting and retiring from football. Linebacker Lorenzo Alexander said he'd never seen anything like it and called it, quote, disrespectful. ESPN's Chris Mortensen said Davis might have put his street clothes on and left the stadium. Show a treat from a tweet. A treat and a tweet. How about that? Chris Mortensen says, word is Vontae Davis put on his street clothes at half, said he was quitting and left the stadium per another source. Bills coach Sean McDermott confirmed that Davis decided not to play, but wouldn't comment on whether he left the stadium. A tweet from WGR 550. McDermott on Vontae Davis, quote, he pulled himself out of the game, told us he was done. Joe Buscaglia wrote in a tweet, I asked Bills head coach Sean McDermott if cornerback Vontae Davis left the stadium at halftime after pulling himself out in the first half. He said, I don't want to get into all that. After the game, Davis released a statement confirming his retirement and explaining his decision. He said he didn't mean to disrespect anyone and had realized during the game that he, quote, should not be out there anymore. This is his statement. He says, this is now I pictured retiring from the NFL, but in my 10th NFL season, I've been doing what my body's been programmed to do, get ready to play on game day. I've endured multiple surgeries and played through many different injuries throughout my career. And over the last few weeks, this was the latest physical challenge. But today on the field really hit me fast and hard. Shouldn't be out there anymore. I meant no disrespect to my teammates and coaches, but I hold myself to a standard. Mentally, I always expect myself to play at a high level, but physically, I know today that is impossible. And I had an honest moment with myself. While I was on the field, I just didn't feel right. And I told the coaches, I'm not feeling like myself. I also wondered, do I want to keep sacrificing? And truthfully, I do not, because the season's long and it's more important for me and my family to walk away healthy than to willfully embrace the warrior mentality and limp away too late. This was an overwhelming decision, but I'm at peace with myself and my family. I choose to be grateful to God for allowing me to play the game that I've loved as a boy until I turned 30 years old. I choose to be grateful to God for being part of the NFL, making lifelong friends over the last decade. There were roadblocks and pitfalls along the way, but I'm grateful to God, all of it, because he doesn't promise any of us an easy journey. The Bills also lost cornerback E.J. Gaines to an injury Sunday, leaving the team even more shallow at defensive back. Found out, by the way, in a different piece, Vontae Davis got some money, some guaranteed money, walked away with, I believe the number was $4 million, walked away with quite a bit of cash right in the middle of a game. And so the question you ask yourself, and this is a tough one, I don't know if I can answer this, but number one, for financial independence, like, what's your number? You know, there's that old commercial where the people walk around with numbers. Everybody's got their number. What's the number it's going to take you to leave? But then number two is, what do you do when you're working in a job that you don't feel like you belong there? So those things, though, on one hand, obviously important questions to ask yourself, but there's a third question to ask yourself. When you're on a football team, you're on a team. And I've often seen people do things like this that help them, don't help the people around them. Because Vontae Davis, all-pro cornerback, great at what he did now. I was going to say what he does, what he did. And now he's saying bye-bye to that thing. But he does it in the middle of a game that they're losing. So they need the help of somebody that knows what they're going to do. And you leave the team? But then again, how long do you stay? And are you really helping the team? I can't answer any of those questions, by the way. Usually this is a show where we talk about the piece and we answer the questions, but there's a lot of dilemmas here, aren't there? When's the right time to leave? And I think on some level, you got to do it when you know that you're ready to go. On the other side, if it involves a lot of different people, I think giving them some notice, like, what's the difference? And I know for football, the difference can be split second. Davis, as he said multiple surgeries. He could get seriously injured in the second half. So it could be a split second. But for most of us, if there's other people involved in that decision, involving them along the way and making sure that everybody knows, well, that's one thing. In the NFL, of course, if you tell people you're going to retire after next week's game, chances are you're probably retiring before next week's game because they're not going to have somebody on the field who's halfway there. Which, by the way, brings up the other thing. In the NFL, that's because they're pro football players, so they don't let people stay and hang out, right? Letting other people know. But on the other side, if they know that you're gone mentally, are you any good? I don't know. I don't know if I can really answer that. But leaving at the halfway point of a football game, it's tough. Then again, staying in a job that you don't know about, also tough. And I think the only really definitive point I can make about this piece is this. I guess our takeaway is, what trade-offs are you making? Because Vontae Davis, based on his statement, knew what the trade-offs were, knew what he was making, made a tough decision. Tough for him, tough for everybody around him. What are your trade-offs? I found when I was a financial planner, a lot of people making a ton of trade-offs and not really considering them, which is sad because, the clock's always ticking and we don't know for how long. So not to get too down or metaphysical. Let's say hi to our friends hanging out with us on Facebook today. And there might be some good opinions here. Chris is here. Chris says, be careful there, Joe. We might actually learn something today about dieting, of all things. If you learned something from me, Chris, about dieting, congratulations. But of course, one nutritional fact now and then, I come about it a little sideways. But our friend Jim is here, Jim Wang. Jim says, if you were down 28-6 at halftime and on the Bills, maybe you'd retire too. Football's tough on the body. I get that. But how would you feel if you were his teammate, Jim? You're out there struggling and hoping to win. And, oh, by the way, my other cornerback got hurt, other defensive player on the other side of the field. So now we're really leaning on you. You go, hey, man, I'm gone too. See you later. Lori writes, some people have a midlife crisis. This dude had a mid-game crisis. Good for him on knowing himself. Maybe a 2-week notice would have been good, though. Yeah. Chris writes, awesome decision, awful timing. He let his teammates down, but it's a great message. If your body and heart aren't in your job, get up out. There's too much great stuff out there to do in life with a few $1 million in good health. I totally agree, Chris. You've only got one life. Time to go. Jim says, just sports in a game. Your team is your family, and they should be number one. But this is not just, I know you say that it's just a sport and a game. This is a big money sport and game. Like, this isn't like you and I, Jim, going out and playing catch. This is millions and millions of dollars on the table for a lot of people. This is a business. And I agree that your family is number one, but I think it's a little more than just a sport and a game. We call it a game, but this is a game at the highest level. And at what point is it a bit? Sometimes I don't like the NFL because it feels like a business. It feels like guys doing business. I tend to prefer college football for that reason. Chris says, kind of reminds me of my job minus the guaranteed millions or even thousands. Yeah, reminds me of a day at Money in the Morning right there, Chris, in the same way. Good stuff. Well, thanks for all that, guys. Let's move on to our second piece, which comes to us from Market Watch. Housing. I'm a guy who's in the middle of maybe buying a house, and I like this piece. This is why Americans are losing confidence in the housing market, by Taylor White. Taylor writes, owning a home, that time-honored life milestone, used to simply be what you did as an adult in America. And for many people, home ownership was the ultimate indicator of life success and social status, but times have changed. According to Fannie Mae, a mere 24% of Americans feel that now is a good time to buy a house. Looking back to 2013, when 54% of consumers were confident about the housing market, it feels as if a lot's changed in a small amount of time. The housing market's far from a perfect science, but there are trends that could be influencing homeowner behavior and confidence, such as rising house prices, salary stagnation, generational trends, and relatively high interest rates. All the above have hurt consumer confidence in the housing market. How do we get here? Let's unpack the above drivers to better understand the state of home ownership in 2018 and what the federal government's doing to reinvigorate the housing market. Rising housing prices. Houses are getting more expensive, period. A recent Zillow report found that the median home value is around $1 million in 197 different cities. This year alone saw the addition of 23 more cities to this no longer exclusive club. The data are not reflective of metropolitan areas alone. In fact, this trend should concern any prospective homeowner, regardless of location. According to a National Association of Realtors report, the median price of a single-family home is nearly $50,000. That's better, higher than 2 years ago. The median price gone up $50,000 in 2 years. Rising home prices would be reasonable outcome of inflation, but as salaries fail to grow proportionally, affordability is damaged, and that could lead to decreasing housing confidence. Salary stagnation, according to Pew Research. Today's real average inflation-adjusted wage is about the same purchasing power it did 40 years ago, and what wage gains there have been mostly flowing to highest paid tier of workers. The rise in house prices is far outpacing salary growth, and this has serious implications for the financial mobility of American families. In the current market, 1 of 200 people will experience a foreclosure, and anyone who undertakes ownership without a very reliable income stream runs the risk of becoming a statistic. Generational trends, one of the greatest threats to the housing markets, the consumer habits of young people. Millennials have already been blamed for ruining, for example, Applebee's and golf, and some experts predict the housing market could be the next victim of emerging consumer trends. According to Business Insider, millennials are buying homes at a slower than usual rate. In the past, 25 to 34 was the typical age to start shopping for houses, but it seems millennials are lagging. Data show a major deterrent for young people is saving enough money for that down payment. And then, of course, rising interest rates. Mortgage rates have risen past 4.6% to their highest level since 2011. Lots of reasons why people aren't buying houses right now. And we're seeing the housing market slow down. But the question here, though, is this: if housing markets are slowing down, and there's fewer people in that market, and more people think it's a bad time to buy, does that actually make it a decent time to buy? Right? Like when people think that it's time to get out of the stock market, they start selling their stocks, and that means that it might be a better time. Houses cost more. And at the same time, I think that if there's less competition for an individual house, are you going to be able to get more concessions from the seller at this point in the game? I don't know. But I clearly see this, especially in housing right now, as a buyer's market. But this is the problem. Is if you are a buyer in real estate, being careful. Those foreclosure numbers are pretty scary. 1 in 200 people. That's a tough statistic. 5% of buyers are going to foreclose on their mortgage. And people aren't buying because they can't afford the down payment. So the pool of prospective buyers getting smaller means if you are in that position, I think that you have more power than ever before. And I think a lot of the time we fall in love, especially in real estate, we fall in love with the property. And because we fall in love with it, we forget that we're in the driver's seat. And certainly what this says to me, if you're somebody with money buying a house in a rising interest rate environment, you've got a lot of leverage. There's a lot of things that I think that you can do to bring that leverage to bear toward you. And some of the things, are pretty basic. Don't fall in love with the property. Realize, much like stocks, that there's other properties out there, even if it's a house that you're going to live in. You know, people have this tendency to fall in love with that one property, realizing that 2 months from now, 3 months from now, there's going to be another property that you're going to love very much too. Don't fall in love. Make business decisions, even with property that you're going to live in. And I think you're going to do a much better job of negotiating. And lastly, realize the role of your professional there. A good financial advisor, especially a fee-only financial advisor, in your corner as a fiduciary. A real estate agent is not a fiduciary and should not factor in to your negotiating decision. Great Freakonomics episode that we can point to from maybe a year and a half ago, maybe longer than that. Talked about how little's in it for a real estate agent to negotiate on prices. It's a lot of money for you, but when you look at their commission on any deal, there's not much in it for them. So use the real estate people for what they're good at, showing you different properties, making sure that you know the whole story, getting good help with inspections. Maybe if you don't have great local mortgage contacts and you want to work with a person instead of working online, finding good people. Like your person in real estate should be great at all that stuff. When it comes to negotiation time, say goodbye to your agent. They're not going to be on your team. They're going to tell you, what, we should just get this done. We shouldn't monkey around. So a few things there, but I think it's more of a buyer's market than we think it is. Let's see. John says portfolio rebalancing time. Absolutely. Jim asked if housing equals a Ponzi scheme. You know what's funny about that, Jim, is that you see signs in this market that are a little like 2008, and it's kind of scary. And not, by the way, people buying 5 houses, but just how overheated the pricing is, and people willing to pay these super duper prices. Lori writes, factor in too supply and demand in the market. In my area, a little inventory with huge demand means it's tough to be a buyer. I've found, Lori, that there's nobody moving in a lot of markets. We actually did a story that's shows the opposite, which is that nobody's moving. Now, the bad news there is when you get a house that actually looks fantastic, people that want to buy that house flooding in some areas. Chris says, I stopped pursuing homeownership a couple months ago. I can't justify tying myself down to a mortgage, a school district, and a local job market. Instead, I now full-time or RV, really, and go where the work and the fun are. Not for everyone, but neither is homeownership. That is really cool. In Orlando next week, Chris, at our live event, we're going to talk to Michelle Schroeder-Gardner, who lives on a sailboat. Much the same reason. That's awesome. Of course, our friend Nick True at Mapped Out Money lives in an RV. That's really, really interesting. Not tying yourself down to a property. I think in a second we're going to we're just going to transition over to the big picture. But first, I need to talk a little bit about Lemonade, because Lemonade is the company I used for my renter's insurance while we're in transition here. And I think you should at least look into it, because it's going to take you 90 seconds. Nobody loves their homeowners or renter's insurance company. You end up filling out endless forms, maybe send a fax, whatever that is. And when you need them most, guess what they do? They hype up your rate. Lemonade's different, powered by artificial intelligence and behavioral economics. Lemonade's replace brokers with bots and paperwork with algorithms. And what does that mean? It means you get your policy in seconds, starting at just $5 a month. Best part, choose a charity to support. Lemonade is going to donate your leftover premium money to that cause once a year. So from a necessary evil into a social good, who knew insurance could be so fun and inexpensive? Head to stackingbenjamins.com/lemonade to get a quote in 90 seconds. 90 seconds to see if your homeowner's quote is right for you or not. stackingbenjamins.com/lemonade. All right, let's get to our big idea. This is the final segment where we take these two pieces. What do a football player retiring, and also, and I'm sorry, I started laughing because Scott just said, Chris, you're telling me I should be living in a van down by the river. I think Chris would answer, yes, you should be living in a van down by the river. But anyway, I get distracted by the audience. Let's get back to business. We're going to take these two pieces. We're going to put them together into something we call the big idea. And the big idea here is something I learned a long time ago, which is everybody looks at the first domino. I think you need to look at the second domino. And for Lori, the second domino might be that there's not very much inventory, but there's still a lot of buyers. Exactly the opposite of what I have here locally. I've got not many people moving at all. So if I'm one of the few buyers in a market where people don't want to buy houses, and what it appears from this article, this Market Watch piece, is happening nationwide, then I've got a lot of power. And I need to remember what that power is. So if interest rates are going up and that's bringing fewer people into the market, I can ask for more concessions, assuming that I've got good credit and I've got the paper in hand saying that I can get the job done, or I'm paying cash, right? Same thing happens when you know your number. Vontae Davis, halfway through the game, decides, you know what? Not worth it anymore. First domino is, I'm a football player. Second domino is, you know what? I've got this more important life. And getting back to Jim's point, Jim said, you know what? It's a game. And while this is an expensive game, what's more important for him? And Jim also said, your most important thing's your family. And that's definitely what Davis thought to himself when he walked off the field at halftime, put his money in his pocket and said, on to new things. You only got one shot. Why waste your time doing something that isn't working for you? But there's this power of the second domino. The first domino is what you think you should do. And a lot of people stop on that first domino. Then there's the second domino. Give you another example of first domino, second domino, fees. And I love this topic because I argue nonstop with people on this topic. When it comes to fees with investments, people stop there. But I will pay for something that's worth something. I'm not just going to live my entire life low feeing everything. And I'm not just talking about investments. I'm talking everything. People look for the lowest cost insurer. As an example, we were talking about one low cost insurer. Otherwise, I want to look at claims experience. I want to know that when my insurance event happens and I need it to pay, that they're going to be there. So I'll pay a little more. That's the second domino. If the claims experience is going to be there, I will pay a little bit more for service at a restaurant. I'll pay a little more. Second domino. I like that idea. And I think that's where we're going to leave it today. Hey, thanks a ton, everybody, for hanging out. We still got a lot of chatter going on in the Facebook group, but we got to get this thing done. Thanks to you for listening at home. Go stack some Benjamins. We'll see you back here next time at Money in the Morning.
Money in the Morning is created by Joe Saul-Sehy and comes to your ears because of the collective genius of our producer, Richie Rutter-Reese, engineer, Caden Thompson, and a pack of very well-trained ferrets here in the basement. You'll find links to all of our headlines featured on today's show in Joe's Twitter feed at @AverageJoeMoney. I know you already know this too, but Money in the Morning is for entertainment purposes only. You shouldn't act on anything recommended by a bunch of entertainers in a basement without first consulting with your financial advisor and second, having your head examined. Have a headline you'd like us to discuss? Send them to Joe at stackingbenjamins.com or put them on our Stacking Benjamins Basement closed Facebook group. This show is copyright 2018 Stacking Benjamins LLC, all rights reserved. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor Doug, and I reserve the right to always say, we'll see you next time back here on Money in the Morning.